Hello and welcome to Anime Memories, and on this episode, I'm going to be talking about Kanon. Similar to Air, Clannad and Little Busters, this is based on a visual novel that was made by a company called Key. Kanon is one of those series that helped popularise visual novel anime back in the day, and it showed that there actually is a market for it. It did really well, to the point where there were actually 2 shows based on it. I'm reviewing the 2006 version because it has a lot more episodes and it covers everything in much more detail than its 2002 counterpart. A high school student named Yuichi has moved to a new city and is living with his cousin and aunt. This isn't the first time he's lived there though. He spent a holiday break in the city as a child, however. He seems to have lost his memory of that time. Over the course of the story, he begins to regain his memories as he develops relationships with 5 different girls. This show starts off as a very light-hearted slice-of-life comedy. It's not over the top with its humour, you won't be bursting out in laughter after every joke, but it is consistently amusing and it creates this enjoyable atmosphere.
It's so good to see you again!
The comedy is also useful at providing breaks from the drama when they eventually start bringing that in. And I'm so glad for that because the drama gets heavy. It comes down like this ton of bricks. The worst part is that you don't see it coming. The first few episodes are so joyous that it lulls you into a false sense of security, and then you get blindsided by the feel train. This is a real tearjerker, and if you cry often when watching anime, this will most likely get you at least once. I personally have never cried when watching anime, and that's not me bragging. In fact, it's something I'm quite disappointed in because I feel that I've always been too emotionally stunted. A few anime have come very close to breaking me though, and Kanon is one of them. There was this one part in here that had a few episodes of heartbreaking build-up, and when the climax came, it was sadder than I could have ever expected. And I said to myself, yes, this is it. I'm finally going to cry when watching an anime. The tears were welling up, my chest was tight, and then my mum came in the room and started watering the plants. It completely ruined it. I struggle to cry when I'm by myself, so there was no way I was going to cry if there was someone watching. And while that one moment was by far the most tragic for me, it's not the only heart-wrenching scene in here. I had to fend off depression quite a few times before this was over. Now, this show could be described as a drama, romance, slice of life, but the most accurate genre would be a harem. There are 5 different love interests for Yuichi to choose from, and while the romance is significantly downplayed from the visual novel, there are still romantic overtones hanging around. In anime, it can be quite difficult juggling so many romantic subplots at once, but I've noticed that there are 3 common ways that harems usually deal with it. Firstly, you've got the love hina route, where they mainly focus on one heroine while the rest are just kind of pushed off to the background. Then there's the Amagami SS route, where each girl receives their own story arc, and at the end of each arc, everything resets and the story begins again. Finally, you've got a slight variation of the second route, where each girl still receives their own story arc. However, it's all tied into one long-running story. This is how Kanon is told, and while it does allow for one continuous plot, which is nice, it does present a pretty big problem. What will happen is you'll have one heroine that is built up over a number of episodes. You'll get attached to them, and finally they reach the climax of their arc, and the anime will say, alright, that's her time done, on to the next girl. They often find a very flimsy reason to have Yuichi move on to the next path from the visual novel, and it always seems really abrupt. To be fair, they do occasionally make references to previous heroines, they don't just forget about them completely. But this doesn't change the fact that they're basically shoving them out of the spotlight to make room for the next one in line. At times, I wish they would have just done the same thing as Amagami SS, because these shoddy transitions cheapen all the important events which happen within each arc. Putting that aside though, the actual content within each side plot is excellent. They gradually increase the amount of drama so that when it reaches the end, you feel saddened yet fulfilled. The story is also enhanced by the endearing cast of characters, although they are a bit generic. For example, all of the girls fit into a well-known character archetype. You've got the older sister type, the clumsy younger sister type, the kudere, the tsundere, and the sick girl. They do get more complex as they receive development throughout their respective arcs, but they're still basically filling a checkbox in a harem checklist. Yuichi is also fairly generic. He's caring and always willing to go out of his way to help someone in need. Just like every other harem protagonist. The only trait that sets him apart is his snarky sense of humour, which was a huge positive. He made me laugh quite a bit.
I'll give it back to you at school first thing tomorrow. Goodbye.
Oh, don't you goodbye me.
Ciao.
Ciao doesn't work either.
Yuichi was especially humorous when he was paired up with my favourite of the heroines, Makoto. Her playful personality was absolutely adorable and her story was by far the most memorable for me. Also, you've probably already noticed that the character designs follow the moe style that rose to popularity in the mid-2000s. The female characters all have these massive wide eyes and the same young looking facial shape. While I know that many people are repulsed by these kind of designs, you can't deny that for the most part, they're very effective at getting the audience to feel affection towards the characters. And since the moe style is still used heavily, it means that the visuals still hold up pretty well. It doesn't look that different from romance and slice of life anime that you'd find today. The colours are lively and the backgrounds have a lot of detail. Now the animation is a bit substandard, however. A harem doesn't really need amazing animation, so it works fine. When it comes to the music, I'm not sure if nostalgia is blinding me a bit, but I love this soundtrack. Whether it's giving you that peaceful feeling or making you bawl like a little girl, it's great at adding some extra emotion to the anime. The music works especially well when something tragic is occurring. Part of the reason why I almost cried when watching this was some of the incredibly emotional songs in here. They make really good use of pianos and violins, I'll just say that. Kanon was one of my first experiences with dramatic anime that have a ton of tragedy, and I've been a fan of the genre ever since. Unfortunately, it's been overshadowed in recent years by its more popular cousin, Clannad. Personally though, I enjoy Kanon a lot more than Clannad. I connected more with the characters and the emotions it made me feel were much more intense. If you're into shows like Your Lie in April and Anohana, I'm sure you'll love this as well. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you have any feedback, feel free to leave a comment, and if you like this video and want to see more, feel free to subscribe as well. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.